Hi, I'm Case DeYoung with the Wilbur Ellis Company. We're in a block of apples west of Sparta, Michigan, in an area called Fruit Ridge, or the Ridge, in West Michigan. The purpose of the video we're putting together is going to be a series of videos that are going to cover the growth stages in the commercial apple orchard and the practices that an apple farmer would do to grow a quality crop of apples. So we're standing in a block of Ida Reds, and the reason we chose Ida Reds is they're one of the earlier apples to break dormancy and start growing and showing a little bit of green. So we got Ida Reds and Macintosh, and there'll be Ginger Golds and a few other varieties, but we picked this one because we got a nice example of where we're just getting a green tip, they're just breaking dormancy, that bud's just starting to open up, and you see that first little bit of what's going to be the flower. So as apples start growing, one of the primary drivers for the apple farmer is to control the diseases that get into the apples, and the main one that we're trying to control is primary apple scab. That starts out overwinters on the leaf, or the leaf litter on the orchard floor overwinters. We get a rain and it's wet for a period of time, and it's a certain temperature, and there's models that describe how long it has to be wet at what temperature before those spores will release, and they'll shoot up and land on either the leaf or the apple, and then you get that big thing that looks like a scab. And the grower is constantly watching that, doing a lot of spraying for that, trying to keep covered up. That keeps him up through most nights, probably into June sometime, depending on the apple growing region you are in. And right along with that is powdery mildew. And powdery mildew overwinters from the previous year in the bud scales. And I showed you that back there in that block of Ida Reds, where those things are the buds are just starting to crack open a little bit. And that's when the infection starts in the springtime, though that doesn't express itself until we get about bloom or so, and you start getting those new shoots growing out past that flower. And we'll show you some of that here as that starts to develop. They'll just be all kind of powdery, webby, white, and that'll actually mark up the fruit some too. So some of the chemicals that the commercial apple grower will use will take care of both diseases. Some we have to kind of mix and match and put those in there, but there's a lot of models for both diseases, and the guys, the farmers and the consultants like myself are paying a lot of attention to that through this early part of the growing season. Okay, so let's talk about soil nutrition now. One of the primary concerns or things that a guy should concentrate on is keeping a weed-free strip like we have here in this block of Honeycrisp. That keeps the weeds from robbing any nutrients or moisture from the tree that the tree could use for producing a quality apple crop. And we determine what we need to do for soil nutrition for the fruit tree based on a soil sample. And that can be accomplished one of several ways. There's a standard method of pulling a soil sample off of a given number of acres, like one sample for every 10 acres. Personally, I like to go ahead and either grid sample or a zone sample based on the soil type. And it gives you a little bit better feel of how the nutrients are going to respond, or the tree's going to respond to the nutrients in that soil. And then you can make variable rate applications. A good way to do that is when you're establishing an orchard, you make sure you do a lot of the phosphorus. If you need to get phosphorus in the soil, that's the best time to do it before you even plant a tree like this. Once you've got a tree established, your options are not necessarily limited, but you have to treat that a little bit differently. So we do quite a few soil samples, and then we make recommendations based on the variety or the soil type. So growing a young tree like this, something that's all susceptible to fire blight, we want to get enough growth to fill the space so we can maximize our production. But we also want to watch that we don't push it too hard in a year, so that in our area of Michigan, fire blight's a big concern. You get a lot of new succulent growth. The wind can blow, a thunderstorm come in, tear some of that new growth open, and you get a fire blight infection and stand the possibility of losing the tree. So it takes a little bit of, I guess, expertise to figure out when to push it to fill the space and when to back off. Young trees sensitive to fire blight are our primary concern. You treat an older tree, I'll more or less fertilize that based on what the crop load was of the previous year. Wait till you see what the fruit set looks like after we're done thinning, and then I'll make an application or two of whatever nutrients that the tree is calling for at that time. So the last topic I want to cover in this segment of our video series is insect control. Not much going on this time of year. The bugs are still a little lethargic, even if they're out at all. They haven't left their overwintering spots. This gives the grower some opportunity to put out what we're calling this pheromone disruption. So what we're showing you here was a twin tube product from Isomate Pacific Biocontrol called CM Flex. That's for the insect called codling moth. The idea of pheromone disruption is you saturate the orchard with what smells like to a male codling moth, a bunch of female codling moths. And they'll fly in the orchard, try to find the females. They can't find them to mate, therefore they don't lay eggs. And then when the eggs would hatch, the larvae are the ones that drill those holes. The classic picture everybody sees of the worm sticking out of the fruit, that's pretty much a picture, a cartoon version anyway, of a codling moth larva. So we put this up. The guy's got lots of time to do this between now and approximately full bloom, when the codling moth emerges or come out and start mating. And as we get closer to that, we'll have a more detailed discussion about that degree days and one of the control measures, and then on top of this pheromone disruption. But nice time of year to hang pheromone disruption. You don't have a lot of foliage out there. You can see your limbs. You can properly place the pheromone in that upper third of the tree, and you can fly right down through these pretty well. You get the help out there, whether it's on the ground or with the poles, or a product we call a piece of equipment we call a brownie, where basically the guy can raise up and move over into the row and just wheel down the row as he's going. So great time of year to be doing that. So all right, so I'd like to wrap this segment of our video production up. First of the series, we'll see how many we go through here, is how fast this growing season goes. But you know, we cover some tree planting, some pheromone disruption, some nutritional, both foliar and on the ground. We'll get into a little bit later on, we'll get into some soil sampling. We talked about some diseases, and we'll get plenty more of experience with that. We'll show some of those as they start to show up in the year. But so again, I'm Case DeYoung with the Wilbur Ellis Company in an apple orchard outside of Sparta, Michigan.